Tuesday morning, where the panels will be digging into the issues around shifting from linear to streaming and back again, how we bundle and monetize content, where technology like AI is helping to not only finesse and personalize offer, but also serves up data, but tells us a bit more about what people are watching. I'm Claire Candola. I lead a strategy and innovation consultancy called Futurtivity. We help media businesses become sustainable, purposeful and profitable. By the way, if you missed the sustainability panel yesterday, because there were only about 10 people left in the room, I know you all went off to the pub. I am going to be doing an online primer in a few weeks, so grab me if you're interested. But back to today's panel. How do you create a content strategy in a world of so much choice and with so many ways to dice and slice programming, where audiences are already experiencing subscriber fatigue before they've even found a program to watch? A couple of staggering stats to add to the staggering stats you've already heard. I've got this one from Evan Shapiro, from Media Analyst, with a pretty good Substack offering. The average user has got over 100 unique logins for different lifestyle apps, 100. And of those, 14 individual media logins. But those subscribers are ready to cancel half of them at the drop of a hat, which means that there's a lot of content to sift through and a lot of risk for content providers and operators as they start planning their content. My other stat, UK electronics retailer Currys has found that Brit spends an average of 182 hours a year searching for something to watch on the television. At that time, you could walk from London to Berlin and probably make your own programme. So, how do pay TV operators and broadcasters plan content offers in that environment and remain relevant to both the existing base but bring in other younger base that might be on TikTok? How do you differentiate your content offer while ensuring viewers can move seamlessly between the content they love, services they knew, and the big branded services that are coming online? I'm delighted to be joined today by three panellists who I know will provide fascinating insights into how you plan an effective content strategy and ensure a distinct offer. So please welcome firstly Peter Vassong, Head of Content at Deutsche Telekom, operating in 10 different markets with a deep connection of both local audiences across the region. Peter Wiedeveld, is that right?
Yeah.
Bill, sorry, Bill. Yeah. But I got the surname right, yeah? There's VP of Platform Content Services over at N7 Group, so a really unique perspective of distributing content both to operators and with distributors and also directly to audiences, but also probably part of Canal Plus Group and access to their vast content offer. And we also have Lee Hobbs, who's SVP and Head of Discovery Networks, EMEA, and also their creative agency, the WB Discovery, bringing a unique oversight of some of the world's greatest content and some super brands, both in terms of distributor operators and direct to consumers with services like Max. Welcome to you all. Let's start by making a very quick overview, but perhaps you can introduce yourself, your responsibilities, and what your business's approach to developing products and content services are. Also, any specific interesting markets you're working in. Peter, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, so thank you for having me here, first of all. Maybe for avoidance of doubt, I'm in the European headquarters, and we at DT define Europe as Europe minus Germany, so I'm not speaking for the German entity. So we're operating pay TV in 9 European markets, roughly 4.1 million subscribers. That is covering Austria, the Balkan region with Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Hungary in the CE region and Greece. So quite a diverse portfolio of markets. Also, in these markets we operate pay TV on a different level of maturity, I would say. So in Poland they have just launched a couple of years ago, so it's quite a new proposition there, while in other markets like Greece, we have a very experienced, very solid, very leading platform with a lot of exclusive content and own content. So it's quite different from market to market what we're doing there. My role in these markets is threefold. First of all, I'm responsible for the international OTT partnerships. So for example, the Netflix deal we have just communicated earlier this year that was done by our central team. I'm doing the overarching TV content strategy for Europe. Also being the DT internal link to finance, legal, and to commercial. And the third is I'm the spot for international content. When anything comes along with touching more than one market, and I come into play like a kind of an in-house consultant.
And Bill,
Bill.
tell us about what you're doing.
Yes, I work at M7 Group in the close to the content team, and M7 is, well, in tradition a linear pay TV provider, starting in the Netherlands and developing into 9 European markets, so the Belgian market, the CE market, in particular Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, German-speaking markets. In Germany we run a B2B platform, in Austria a B2C platform. We've been acquired by Canal Plus Group a couple of years ago, and that has changed a lot for us in a positive way. We were already preparing, let's say, for the new media landscape, which is now in full swing. People want to watch whenever they want, the screen they want to have great asphalt and streaming offer. And that is exactly what the Canal Plus is bringing in, all the know-how, the assets and the experience, and of course the library of content, film series, etc., sports rights. So this is a great asset for us to make a transfer from this traditional pay TV operator into what we call a hybrid content provider. And let's say we are launching in different markets new platforms, all under the Canal Plus brand, streaming platforms, premium content propositions, also under the Canal Plus brand name, Canal Plus Sports, Canal Plus Action, movie channel. Because we believe that, and of course, Canal Plus believes that to remain relevant, you need to come up with content that is sort of exclusive and has a certain quality, and that is also in this way we can differentiate from the let's say the existing streamers. And also very important is that we can build upon a base of over 3.5 million pay TV subscribers, like you. We believe that is a more sensible and solid way of growing into the streaming area, because it helps subscribers to remain loyal, and also it helps to attract, obviously, to get new subscribers on board who want to watch next to the linear, also the streaming national television. I think we saw this morning on the slides that linear is still very valid and very important, especially in the markets we operate in, Central Eastern Europe. So that should not be forgotten with all the special streaming, etc. Still, for us also, this is still a very important part of our revenue stream. But again, to stay relevant, we have to go into the direction of streaming and asphalt, and that's what we do.
I think it's been touched on before, and we'll come back to the fact that with so much content out there, actually linear is offering, it's almost been refreshed and revitalised, and has opportunity. Now, Leo, obviously you're responsible for a whole raft of channels, linear, on demand, and Max, as recently relaunched and rebranded. Tell us a bit about what you're doing, where your responsibilities are, because there's quite a lot of them.
Yeah. Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here. So yes, I run what we call our Discovery Networks, which is sort of brands like Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet, ID, etc. Plus a couple of our scripted channels since we merged with Warner Brothers. We also have streaming and SVOD services that we also run in my group. And we're a kind of matrix team spread across Europe. We're headquartered in Amsterdam, thanks to Brexit, with our licenses moving out of the UK. But our team is based across the whole of Europe, basically. And so we run around 70 different channel feeds at the moment. We're in about, I mean, it's hard to really say on the subscriber numbers. It's about 300 million plus with the whole of Europe, Middle East and Africa with our brands. All of those channels are different, as we were talking about before, because of cultural differences, etc. So it's not one size fits all for brands like Discovery Channel. There's a kind of core strategy, and then we'll change that, by market. And then my other hat is our internal creative agency, which we created about 18 months ago when we merged with Warner Brothers. And it's an in-house creative team that works across most of our linear networks, especially the pay networks, including Cartoon Network and kids brands, channels like TNT and TCM. And we also do some theatrical as well, mostly local theatrical in France, Germany, for example. So we're a big team based across the whole of Europe, and we kind of touch all areas of the business really, as you referenced. With Max launching, we're also supporting that in several markets as well.
And obviously there's parallels for you all across the European experience, but we'll come to the fact that you're across EMEA, so there's some other markets that are interesting at a different stage. Because one of my next question for you all is, you're really well established, you're brands with millions of subscribers and viewers under your belt. Is the focus now the content services to retain your customers and stop them churning and stop them going elsewhere, going off network and going online, or is it about acquiring new customers and offering more to attract a new audience in?
Yeah. As I already indicated in my introduction, that retaining subscribers is obviously that's a very important driver. Because that's the solid base where business is based upon. And our traditional subscriber base, especially when you look at Central Eastern Europe and a bit Benelux, let's say it's the older male, nothing wrong with that. But they have a certain preference, of course, which you have to cater for. And that's also why we have been acquiring, for instance, sports rights for Czech or Slovakia, Premier League rights, and also the Champions League rights, same for Austria. And that, yeah, and together with streaming platform and premium movie channel, that helps to keep the interest and loyalty of these type of subscribers. Obviously, also we want to target new audiences, the younger audience groups, and that's why we also have been investing in OTT, a standalone OTT platform, so to make it easier for these target groups to access content, and also looking at, of course, content creation. We also do content creation these days, and also then try to target the young audience.
So let's say, Peter, with Deutsche Telekom, you have this base because you've been the network that's been in this market for so long. How are you approaching bringing in new customers? What's or content services to keep your basic telco customers, or is content to bring in new customers? How do you leverage your content services?
I mean, for us in the region, of course, the plan is to grow. Yeah? So it's not about intentional, it's to grow. We are operating in very healthy pay TV markets, so we don't see the decline like in the US with the pay TV services. So in our markets, we have a very high pay TV penetration in most of the markets. There are other markets which have a lower pay TV penetration, like Greece, for example, where the growth is a bit limited because of external factors. For example, piracy in Greece is a big problem. Yeah. And in Greece, for example, just to say that, I think the entire Greek market has 1.3 or 1.4 million pay TV subscribers right now. We believe that there are around 700,000 illegal set-top boxes in the field. I'm not talking about cracked cards, I'm talking about really set-top boxes with 10,000 channels, including Max, everything on the international stuff, 15 euros a month, and people believe it's illegal. People have not the perception it's illegal. Okay? It's even a customer care behind it. They can call somebody if it doesn't work. Yeah. So that's really weird, and that's something we have to fight together with the local authorities and competition together. But in general, we operate in very healthy markets, so we want to grow. But I think that the growth for us has two layers. First of all, we have to have a very good TV product in terms of content, in terms of content portfolio, in terms of user experience, in terms of UI, everything around that. So that has to be top notch, and I think that is very important to have. But for us, it has also to be embedded in our telco products. And so we are a telco, we are the leading telco in the region. And I think combining that TV product into our bundles with mobile, with broadband, everything together with scaling discounts, we call it Magenta 1, so the more subscriptions you have, the more discounts you get. And that all together with top service or reliable networks, I think this is something which is making our growth.
You're coming from a position of 300 million odd subscribers across the world, which is, when I worked at Discovery going back 20 years, it was like 85 million, so you've done a bit of growing. But you've got some of the world's leading content brands in there. How many more people can you reach? Is it about making sure your content stays relevant and fresh? What's your approach with this raft of services that you can offer?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think For us, I think streaming is definitely an opportunity for us to reach a new audience that maybe have sort of stopped watching linear as much. I still think personally that there's a big place for linear, and I agree with these guys. In certain markets, we don't see linear performance dropping. It may not be growing as fast as it did, but it's definitely not declining. And I think even in the more mature Western European markets, if you have the right content and you offer it in multiple ways, streaming, linear, etc., then you can still reach a very diverse audience. So we definitely see an older demographic watching our kind of more traditional linear brands. And the same show will then be seen by a more diverse demographic, younger, more women, etc., on the streaming platform. Same show, with no difference whatsoever. So I think that's really exciting. It also shows that if you have the right content and you curate it well, you can still reach a big audience.
Your colleague Jamie Cook was talking about the fact it's no longer a case of linear versus streaming. It's a much more nuanced approach to what's being offered. But how, and I totally take on the point that there's a lot more growth and space left in linear, particularly in sort of Central and Eastern European markets. But actually, I think we've got a bit of a resurgence. There's so much content that we need a simplicity. That fact of 182 hours a year searching for content. Television takes that problem away, doesn't it? Because you sit there. But as you're looking at that content and how you massage it and plan for it across those different environments, how do your content strategies and your planning differ between demographics and markets? How do you change that approach? I mean, but you've got one offer that's going across markets, and you're trying, a big offer, a big offer going across markets, but the difference there is that you are sort of providing a wholesale bundle to telcos as well as working directly with customers. How do you nuance that offer for across linear and on demand and branded services to different markets to make sure it hits the spot in every market?
It's of course the art is to find the right mix, the right optimum, the mix of international content. Of course, we can leverage on the group. We have a lot of access to international channels and also on-demand content which can work across territories, but you need to address the very specific local interests and needs of the markets. In that respect, the Hungarian market is completely different from the Dutch one. So you have to cater for the local preferences. So in that respect, we are also very much a local operator. How you do that? Of course, we use research data. We analyze what is consumed in what way. So that's of course an important input. Also to create the right scale. You touch upon the telcos because to create new content, it's not cheap, and to buy new content, especially when it comes to sports rights, it's an investment. So what we try to achieve, and I think so far that worked well, is to search for partnerships where that makes sense, and especially with my neighbor, with the telcos, and Dutch Telecom is a good example. So where we seek a partnership and a close partnership with Dutch Telecom, specifically for the premium sports content and also a multi-platform, ESCO platform. So that allows Dutch Telecom to also offer the Premier League rights in the Czech and Slovak market and also now the Champions League rights from coming season onwards. And we do the same in other markets like Austria, where we have a partnership with A1 in Austria. So this is for us, I think also for the long term, more in general, it's important to come to partnerships where it makes sense. I mean, Canal Plus Group is by nature, by DNA, a content producer, distributor, acquirer. So that's our strength. I speak for Canal Plus. So we say to telcos with all respect, I mean, they were extremely good at laying out infrastructures, rolling out fiber, 5G. That's their expertise. So let's work together where that makes sense, where you're complementary. And I think in the case of Dutch Telecom, there's a very good example where you can come to these partnerships. And I would say the same with streamers. We also work together with streamers where that makes sense. And,
that's when we look at the sort of money part of it. We'll come back to the streamers, but Peter, how do you're talking about where you're acquiring big rights international, and talked about what you're doing locally within markets. How do you decide how to allocate that budget and your content strategy, where you put the budget into local programming that's going to really serve those audiences and keep stickiness versus the big ticket, big brand stuff that you need to have in your offer so that you're competitive?
The local content is getting more and more relevant for us. So, I mean, in all the markets we're operating, we have strong local content. Look at CME Group at the Slovak-Czech region, now acquired RTL 2 years ago in Croatia. We have so many local content which is really important for us, and this is what I say, the better and butter business nowadays, because people are watching it. So I think the viewer share of local content in Greece is 70%. And so, and all the big international brands, and that's why I believe sometimes that the international linear business is, for me, still a bit overpriced. So there's big names, but when we have discussions with the big international content partners, they always say two things. We invest so much into content to justify the price. I said yes, but look at the market share; it is not that big. So why should I pay for that? And the next thing is they're saying, oh, we have such a powerful brand. Yeah, but you're cruising on the power of the brand, because in the end, so I have to justify how we allocate budgets in relevance, and of course, the relevance of the content, of the viewership. So that's why I think it's quite difficult to just talk about brands in the end. So it's about allocating budgets in accordance with viewership.
So Leo, so you've got a lot of those big brands that are saying, which I value. Yes, I value it in the
I didn't
bundle.
say Discovery. No.
But I mean, there's so many brands that you have. Are you selling? Are you planning on the channel brands, or is it the individual programming brands? We had a chat before this, and we talked about some of the content, like Deadliest Catch, which I think was knocking around when I was in the channel, and that's a kind of a content brand in itself. But now with Warner, you've got the Harry Potters and the DC Universe, but you're also investing heavily in local content. And how do you respond to that? Because you're facing the same thing. Like, where do you bring in the big ticket content, and where are you extracting value out of your local productions?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point what Peter was saying. I think for us, we do local content. We have a number of markets where we have big free-to-air networks, so Poland, the Nordic markets, Germany, Italy, and therefore we're making thousands of hours of local content across Europe. On paid television, we don't invest as much. We do in the Netherlands actually we have quite a slate of local content, excuse me, particularly on TLC. For us, we do produce local content, as I say, but we are an international broadcaster. And for us, I think what we feel is we're bringing something different. You mentioned Deadliest Catch, it's about season 16. That show is incredibly expensive and difficult to make. And I don't think there are many local broadcasters, free or pay, who could develop a show like that and sustain it with that kind of level of investment. What we're able to do, because we have a network that broadcasts all over the world, is to kind of drive the ROI from that. So I think that that brings a different value, I think, to both of these guys' platforms. There are the local channels with the local content. You can get some local shows on our networks, but we give you a window on the world. We give you a different perspective. In many of the markets, to be honest, especially I would say in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, in some of the African countries, we almost fulfill the role of a public service broadcaster sometimes. I don't mean with local content, I mean with blue chip documentaries, the kind of scale that we're bringing to the network. So I do think there's a kind of really nice interplay between all of that. I do totally understand Peter's point, and I know he keeps our commercial teams on their feet when they're negotiating about our networks and stuff. But I do think there's a kind of, if you think of the ecosystem of any platform, and if you think about streaming, I think this is a really good example. Although Netflix, for example, now has a lot of local content, it's still the big ticket shows that are driving the engagement, and we see that on Max ourselves with shows like House of the Dragon, for example. We have loads of local programming too, but it's those big event shows that still drive the audience. And I think you have that on pay TV networks like Discovery Channel. So Gold Rush, Deadliest Catch, Naked and Afraid. We're making local versions of Naked and Afraid in many markets now. But the highest rated show, even when we have the local versions, continues to be the original show from the US.
Now
You have partners in 7 markets, so it works. Yeah, so
Exactly.
But that brings us to a really interesting point, because you're all investing in content locally and you're operating across multiple markets or the whole world in this guy's case. When you're looking at creating the local show, how much is your eye on the potential for that show to be broadcast as a global show? Because like we look at Netflix and Amazon, they are going in and they are putting a lot of money into local production, whether that's in India, South Korea, Spain, and they definitely, every piece of content is produced so that it can reach international audiences. And I think during lockdown, it was a South African show that was the top rating show on Amazon. I can't remember the name of it, which I should do in the content panel. But how do you look at the potential value that you can create from a piece of local content, or is it very much focused on it locally for local audience?
I mean, I think from our perspective, we make the local show primarily for the local audience. We learned, a long time ago to try and make a local show and then put loads of international contributors into it, or try and make it global. It just becomes this kind of horrible soup that no one can relate to. It doesn't really work. It doesn't rate so well. But if you make a really good local show that's very authentic and works, you can then make that travel. So for us, for example,
so you to format it. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a show we started in Spain called Border Control Spain, Madrid Airport. We now have Border Control Sweden as a spin-off. We're looking at other locations too, but those shows don't just air in Sweden and Spain. They air all over Europe on Discovery Channel, plus other local networks that we have as well. And the reason they work is they're great stories. Everyone travels, everyone stresses when they get to the airport, looks guilty even if they've nothing to feel guilty about. All of that plays out beautifully on screen, and once you kind of handle the language in, it's a universal story. So we're always looking at local content that will work locally, but has that special ingredient that will make it travel outside of the originating country. We use a lot of our UK shows all over the world, German, Italian, Swedish, Spanish. There are some countries where you make local shows and they don't travel so well, and that's just, I think, something that's harder to overcome, but we always try to do that.
And that's when you're taking a kind of a global audience. You're working in a kind of closer region, so if you produce locally or commission locally, does that have potential in the surrounding markets because you're dealing with sort of closer cultural kind of crossover?
Yeah, we had some, we are basically just starting in this production phase. Of course, again, backed up by Canal+. But what we already experienced is that it's not so easy to produce series which can travel along the markets, let's say our markets. And we tried it with one series, so it's nice to make productions in the different countries and give it a bit of a local flavor. But then what you find out is that this local flavor is only appreciated by the locals.
Yeah.
So, I found it nice to see in series setting in the Prague setting in Vienna, but most of the people, they rather see something which is closer to their home. So that's a bit of a lesson learned, and that's what, when it comes to new productions, we are more focusing on, let's say, local productions and take the, if it can work in another market, it's nice to have, but it's not the prime objective. But that's then for productions, and of course on top of that there are still series or films that work very well internationally and across borders. That's another story.
It's the same for us. So you might think that Telecom, like 9 European markets, great company, big company, why do they do their own content which travels along the territories? That doesn't work in the end because they have such a diverse portfolio. Poland is not North Macedonia, Greece is not Austria. Yeah, so it's really the content produced would be something which is in the middle, and this in the middle doesn't work because it has to be local. So we are doing a very few own productions, primarily in Greece, where we have an own studio, so we are producing even a fiction show and even dubbed in Slovak language, it's all Czech language. So if you do it, then we do it hyper locally.
Yeah, we see even what we got is linear channels indeed from Czech who want to go to Slovakia, but they need to have a localized version, otherwise it wouldn't work in Slovakia. It's also, of course, in order to generate more ad revenues.
And to get the scale that you need.
Yeah,
Some of these markets are quite small, and it's getting with that value and that ROI on your content.
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of probably generation. I mean, it's still, of course, targeting and slightly older target group, more attached to local culture and habits, and I guess with the new generation, younger generation, they're more looking across borders and probably more open and sensitive, interested in content that works across borders and more, let's say, globally minded.
But you pick up that point of you've got a Czech channel wanting to go to Slovakia because it's all about the ad revenues. You guys are pay TV networks, you've got a mix of pay and free, direct to consumer services. What is the role of ad-supported channels and services and models for you as pay TV providers or a pay TV network? Are the ad services adding value, or is it diluting your subscription revenues? Because ultimately that's what your business is built on, is that monthly revenue from the customer. So what is the role of the ad-funded services within your mix and your content strategy?
I would say until now, none, almost none. And so we are operating, as I said, in a very diverse set of markets, very small markets, you said, very fragmented. We have high GDP markets like Austria, but very low like North Macedonia. The CPM for advertising is very low in most of the markets. So I'm not really that optimistic for ad-supported models in our region. Look at Disney. Disney Plus was always supposed to introduce an ad-supported tier in our region. They always discussed it, but they never did it. And they won't do it, I believe. Netflix always ruled it out because they say that it's not worth the effort. I think Sky Showtime does it now, but I think for them it's more about upselling to premium tiers. You heard yesterday about Max considering to do something as supported tier. I would like to understand what's your rationale behind that one. So I'm not really a big fan and not a big believer in ad-supported models in our region at least. I like them because if you have a lower price ad-supported tier, it's easier to integrate it to tariffs. Yeah, but apart from that.
I mean, the example I mentioned, that is not our own channel.
No, but it was a good segue into my question about ad-funded models.
We have channels which are run from SPI.
Yeah.
So these are also localized channels and mostly driven by ad revenue. So but that's, I would say, a different kind of segment. Of course, it's an important extra. But for Canal Plus as such, it's good, and what we are doing, pay TV is still the prime revenues, and that's where we count on, and for the future as well.
And then you've got a different mix. You've got a mix of free and ad-funded services, and moving people onto streaming from channels. You're working in markets such as in Africa, where there's a real struggle to get subscription revenues. You know, it's a very small portion, and we know that ad-funded services where you get scale. How are you approaching? Do you see potential for your brands? Is it an upsell? How does it fit into your mix?
For us, it's really critical ad revenue. Obviously, on free to air, that's clearly the most critical revenue. But even on pay, ad revenue is really important. But it does vary by market. So this is where it's interesting. So the more mature Western European pay TV markets, ad revenue is important for us, as well as subscription revenue. And then in some of the smaller markets, like these guys are saying, it's obviously more about subscriber revenue. But we do have notable markets like Romania, which is a really important ad sales market for us as well, and increasingly markets like Hungary as well. So it's a mixed bag actually. I think it depends on the size of the market really. But for me, it's interesting. I think they really do add value to the consumer as well. So if you, we're talking about international versus local. The interesting thing about having sort of ad sales means that on the feeds you kind of opt out, you have local ads going in. It gives us much more flexibility to also look at some local content, etc. So it allows us to make channels that would not necessarily have any local content have more, if that makes sense. So I think it, aside from maybe some viewers going, I hate ad breaks, which I know everyone has a view on, it actually can make the channel feel more locally relevant, I think, to consumers as well. It also allows us to do cross-promotion with our very valuable partners and stuff. You know, in the ad breaks you get that flexibility so that only a viewer in Serbia or Croatia will see the messaging.
It just feels more relevant.
It feels more relevant, yeah. So, and to your point with Africa, yes, that's always, you know, a challenge. South Africa obviously is a different situation. We do have a sizable ad sales business in South Africa actually as well. So working with our partner DSTV.
I think we're getting close to the time, and I want to give the audience, I'm sure there'll be questions. So it'd be good to have a last question or two, which is, for each of you, where are you seeing the opportunities for pay TV? What are the trends that you're looking at? And then what's your USP in your company that will ensure that you remain relevant into that future? Choose, you can jump in. Who wants to?
Yeah, well, it has been of course said already, but I'm not repeating and confirming that. And that's also where our strategy is based upon, is that in the end where you kind of come up with a solution that gives basically everything to the consumer, from linear to streaming as well. Different types of content catering both the local markets with the right, and not ignoring them, but catering them, but bundled with the let's say international type of content, which you still need to localize to a certain extent. And then the partnerships are important, also in view of content cost, and better to work together and create a better scale. That's what's already in progress. And I think it's also for the consumers, audience, getting confused with an overdose of offers and the funny game, as you mentioned, that there should be much better aggregation of content and content access. And of course, that's also our ambition, to be that aggregator in the end, where we can bundle the linear needs with the OTT and SVOD needs, and integrate where that makes sense and where it makes it more attractive, of course, the properties of the streamers.
That's more discussion, another panel for another day. Pete, what about you? And what are the opportunities for you as Deutsche Telekom, and what's the USP that will keep you pushing forward and keep bringing more business in?
I only agree with Bill about the partnering. So partnerships for us is super important. I mean, we are a super aggregator. We're not doing so many own productions, so we have not much to differentiate in the end, and most of the markets we're operating in. So that's why I think all the partnerships are really relevant, and we bring a lot to the table in these partnerships. If you're partnering with a big Astro streamer, for example, what we bring to the table, we bring loyalty, and we bring bundled subscribers, we bring them, we give them audiences and target groups which are for them not so easy to reach. Yeah? So we have a very refined way of how to communicate with our customers. So I think partnerships is really important for us, and we bring a lot to the table. In the end, it's for us also about how we can monetize content which is already there in the best way. So, for example, in Slovakia, we are doing synthetic channels where we are using on-demand rights and producing a mixture between playlists and linear channels artificially, which is really working well. So, and of course, the big thing, AI. Yeah. So, just to mention AI again.
Because it hasn't been mentioned.
Yeah, it was based on the panel yet. Yeah, that's right. So, I think all this personalization thing, making things easier for the customer. Localization with AI will be a big thing, I believe. So content will travel even more in the future. Yeah? So that's all relevant. And if you ask me what's our USP is, again, the telco view. So we offer great TV together with reliable broadband, with great mobile, attractive price point, great service, all that together. That's our.
And we all know stable broadband for your streaming is kind of essential. So
I know, yes, sure, yeah. But also for the end customer, broadband access and mobile access all together, all in one hand, is something which will keep us relevant in addition.
We can help you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, we have a partnership, we have a deal on the table.
Already.
Now, Lee, your chance to tell us what you see, what your vision for the future of what's going to be important. And I mean, how many USPs have you offer? You've got a lot on, what in your bag?
Well, I think the future, I hear sit in a lot of meetings or sessions like this, saying that linear is dead, etc., etc. I really don't think that's true. So I do think it's changing, but I think also streaming is changing, and so I think there's a real partnership opportunity for linear and streaming. Obviously, we're doing that in our own company with the interplay between Max and our linear networks, be they free-to-air in some countries or pay television in others. So it's about windowing content, offering viewers the chance to really explore your content and go deeper. So for us, I think the future will be kind of a less is more approach. You know how I think a long time ago it was normal to have like 300 TV channels, 200 TV channels on your pay TV platform. I really think consumers want 30 to 40 really amazing channels for their favourite content that they can see have content investment, be it international or local. So I think that's what we're going to see, is that there'll be much closer connections between streaming and linear, and I think that the linear channels will get curated and run even better. We're working really hard on that to change how we're running our networks. We all can admit there are way too many smaller pay TV niche channels probably still out there, and for us it's about really focusing on the big content, the big brands. And our USP, honestly, I think our USP is our ability to tell stories. Warner Brothers Discovery, from movies to scripted series to kids to CNN to sports. We have TNT Sports in the US and here in the UK, Eurosport across Europe. We, factual lifestyle. We have kind of everything, and I think that's also key for both platforms, streaming platforms, and linear. Is that you have a really strong offering across multiple genres. I think just having, you were saying about having sports, it's so critical. If you don't have that, that's sort of there as an engagement tool for a certain demographic. But we can see also that kids is really critical, and Disney obviously kind of owns that. They're kind of really seen as being the kids brand. But on Max, for example, we still have over 1,500 hours of kids content. We know that it's really critical to to have something for the entire family. So I think that it's going to be about curation, windowing, and kind of making bold moves about where we kind of invest as media companies, rather than trying to do everything that we maybe did for many years. But for us, our USP is, I genuinely think there are very few companies that can tell stories like us and are investing in the kind of the content that we're making, basically.
And what we talked about before, sort of super scheduling as a fine art.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there is so much content, and because there is a move back to linear, and so we've really got to use that as a vehicle to showcase.
It's funny, we're talking about AI. I keep hearing, oh Lee, AI is going to take over your scheduling team at some point. They're not required. I have yet to see any kind of AI that can kind of get a real sense of what episode of a show goes into the next show, or what movie really connects. Metadata is one thing, but kind of it's a dark art, scheduling. If any of you work in program planning, you'll know what I mean. That our program planners spend hours looking at a junction in between a show. Yeah,
it's slightly overhyped. AI. I think it will be important, but for content creation with the real creativity, I'm not sure if AI can really. I agree. It's a bit like fast. I mean, fast is important, but it's so overhyped as if that's the real thing. Yeah. It's an extension of what is already there. That's a long tail extension.
That is another discussion. AI, and where is it relevant, and where is it a human touch that's needed? Because there's an alchemy, as opposed, which is all film and storytelling is alchemy. And if you talk, I remember when Lovely was bought by Amazon, we're sitting there and it's working out what content's going to work. Some of it's just feeling. It's just knowing those audiences as much as it is, and so there is a real art form. But I really we're chatting on. Is there anybody in the audience that has a question for our lovely panelists, or are you so? We have one at the back. Please go ahead.
A question for Peter and for Bill. Do you see the increasingly sophisticated connected TV platforms as partners or as competition for pay TV operators moving forward?
You mean the Samsungs? and so on.
So yeah, Samsung, Titan, LG, you know, there's a raft of them. So
Well, I think that's, what can I say? I think that they are an important partner because in the end the screen is the gateway to the content. And I must say what Samsung brings on Samsung Plus on content, it's mostly fast content. It's a nice complementary again, but I don't see as a threat because in the end people want to have the real local content, the quality content, the live sports content, and so I would say let's be a partner and work together where it makes sense. But I don't, at this point at least, I don't see it as a threat or as a competitor.
I agree with Bill, and in addition I would say when we talk about power apps being on the connected TV device, and they're not the right guy to answer that question by the way, because it's a TV product question, but I would say it limits us of controlling the ecosystem a bit. Yeah? So, ask the product team on that one specifically.
I mean, for us, the Quick TV is also very important because we have these smart TV apps, so it's widely used, so it's a very convenient way of accessing the content and all the functionality of the set-top box, so it makes the set-top box redundant. So in that respect, the partnerships we have with Samsung, LG and many others are very critical for the success of this kind of app. So yeah, partnerships again is I think the key.
I mean, I think that's a really good point about the apps and the access points that you've got, because that argument of TV ecosystem versus pay TV box or whatever, that's kind of gone, because you've got the same apps that are going to be on your PS5 that are going to be on your Samsung TV, that are going to be available via whatever. It's trying to, that's gone, the customer's gone, and they're going to find your content wherever you are. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think that just better curation full stop, you know, to kind of make sure that we're following trends, we're following where consumers are. I think that's kind of the most critical.
A question for you, Lee. Could you imagine a similar cooperation like in the US that you work together with, let's say, Paramount, Disney, and offer a bundled service like in the US?
With the sports.
With the sports? No, in general. I mean, that you create a kind of like a bundle. Like
super bundle. Super bundle.
So basically the trend which is set in the US, could you imagine that happening in Europe?
I can't imagine it possibly happening here.
Right.
I'm not the commercial person.
It's more expensive then, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. But I think there's all to play for actually. I think that, you know, I think we all as media companies need to get smart. I think it's really interesting, the Shapiro figures that you started with, that you know, so many people are ready to drop so many subscriptions.
Half of the subscriptions are ready to go.
Yeah.
If we can just find out, I think that was a conversation yesterday, what we subscribe to.
Yeah.
Because I think they'll sit in our bank statements or
Yes,
Apple account, and we don't really know until we go, why have I spent 70 quid or whatever on these things. Any more questions from the audience? Yes. Let's put that hand up with pride. Come on. Go ahead.
So do you think that the quality of the content as of image and sound quality delivered by the service matter to the customer satisfaction?
So, could you say that just a bit more loudly?
Okay, I don't have a loud
voice. Let me,
Do you think the quality of the content as of image and sound quality delivered by the service matters to the satisfaction of the viewers?
Yeah, I definitely think so, yeah. I think it's not just the content itself, right? They want to experience it in HD or, you know, really enjoy it as it was meant to be seen, really. So, and again, that's something certainly we work hard at technically to make sure all our networks, you know, broadcasting in the right sort of quality, etc. I think, you know, most people spend a lot of money on their TV, right, these days. It's a big, important part, or their, you know, their phone or whatever, and if the content isn't formatted to fit that, I think that's really frustrating. That's another reason to cut the cord, right, and end the subscription, I guess. So I think it is important.
Don't give all the viewers a reason to
exactly.
cut it, because then they've got a very short patience, haven't they, in terms
definitely.
of what they'll accept as being less than standard. But you're working with genres that lend themselves to the highest sound and visual quality, like documentaries, movies, sport.
It's key. Yeah, it's key.
Yeah.
There's a role for TV and effect as well, of course.
Yes.
That the content comes across to the
More
screen in the right way, the
partnerships.
right sound. And that you really have the live experience also when it comes to live sports, also especially.
And
So
increasingly,
there's maybe still a role to play for.
and increasingly, obviously, the reliability of that network.
Yeah.
That's where you come
Yeah.
in.
Oh, yeah.
Ensuring that content exists, and I think it's more frustrating than when it
Okay, no
glitches
problem.
just in
Yeah.
one moment.
Absolutely.
But unless there are any more questions, because you're look fatigued through hunger now. Yes. So next up is lunch. That's the next bit. For the VIPs or the VVIPs amongst us, the MPAW are sponsoring an